when that trailer dropped, and before that, when they started, again, we're going to talk about leaks. When they leaked that picture of Robert Pattinson in the suit on the motorcycle, and it's just like some production still, not even a production still, it looks like someone just picked up their iPhone, took a picture, and everyone was like, boo, hits, no, Twilight Batman, boo, boo, boo. I was like, hey, I just want to remind you guys, in 89, everybody went, Michael Keaton?
Yeah. Beetlejuice?
Val Kilmer, like every single Batman has been hated.
Arguably, Val Kilmer was bad.
How dare you?
But Val
Batman
Kilmer,
Forever.
I know Bob Kane said that he looks the most like Batman of anyone they ever cast. He was like, that dude looks...
Val Kilmer?
Yeah. He was like, that dude looks like...
That was towards the end of Bob Kane's life, too. In his defense, he also looked at his nurse and said the same thing. It's a terrible joke.
Michael Keaton, like, obviously, like, did a great job, but my one issue with, like, 89 Batman is that Batman is just a terrible detective. Like, that's absolutely just a love story. Awful detective.
100%. 100%. And but this is the first time they actually pulled Vicky Vale, like, into, like, the mainstream. Anyway.
The 89 Batman has one of my favorite little random lines of when Vicky Vale comes over to the mansion with dinner with Bruce Wayne, and they're sitting at that giant long dining table, and she goes, how often do you eat in here? And he goes, truth is, I don't know if I've ever even been in this room before.
I like that he's bad at being a billionaire in that movie. His Batman is like uncomfortable, or his Bruce is like uncomfortable with being rich. I really like that about it, but that's obviously writing.
I have predictions. First of all, the second Jeffrey Wright came on screen, I was like, that may be the best, even with Gary Oldman, might be the best choice for Gordon. I was like, 100%.
He's got that world weariness, hasn't he, Jeffrey Wright? He's got that kind of...
Yeah, but just energy. Not only that, but I'm sorry, man. No, I'm not sorry. I love the fact that we are finally starting to see these characters outside of specific criteria, right? The whole thing about Batman is anyone can be Batman. It is greatness arising from tragedy that has been thrust upon you. And that's the same thing with Gordon. Like the whole thing with Dark Knight Rises, or no, not Dark Knight. What's the graphic novel? Am I drawing a blank?
Returns?
Oh, Dark Knight Returns, yeah.
Yeah, Dark Knight Returns is that it's a Gordon story. And being able to understand that he's not this do-good cop with the, phone under the glass that we saw in 66. Like, he's a real man who's struggling. It's so good. But the prediction that I have, and I have not been watching react videos or anything else. I think the body that you see in the beginning is Alfred.
Because they've cast my boy Circus, haven't they? Haven't they cast Circus?
It is Circus.
I think they cast...
Your boy.
I think they cast...
I've directed him. He was in Volume. He's the baddie of Volume. Yeah.
That's actually very cool. I didn't know that.
I think
Mike.
that Andy Serkis, I think they cast
lovely.
the voice, and you keep hearing the voice, but you never see him. And I think that Alfred is the disembodied, ghostly voice of his companion, his spiritual companion for this thing. But the second that I saw Robert Pattinson without the cowl, I went, they may have done it. They may have finally cast young version, like year one.
I think he's year 2 specifically, which same shit, but
Two's
specified,
great. But it's like early, but it's like, because there was that one thing where
it's like year one, but he's looking a bit tired. He's like year one, but like the makeup's running a little. It's not.
We don't need to see his origin story again.
Yeah, but there may be a version of this where it looked like there was a version of this where he didn't have the cowl on. He had like the old school, like I'm just going to throw on a gym sock over my face and go out and beat up bad guys. So there's a little bit of like hybrid year one in there, but the fact that he looks like the first Bruce Wayne Batman on camera yet.
It's funny how I did not have that reaction. I
love this. This is why I love this fucking podcast.
Disagree with me, baby.
Well, it was one of those where I said, maybe I'm too indoctrinated to the much later than year 1 or 2 notion of kind of coming into the Batman story. But for me, I could see him more easily in the role of Batman than in the role of Bruce Wayne, because not that I was part of the like, oh, Twilight, blah, blah, blah crowd. And I never even saw those films. I don't have that baggage to bring to the table in terms of like him. Liar. But what? I see you there.
I'm very much waiting to see who wins this fight to decide what fight I have after.
I just actually
vampires
agree
and
because
werewolves. I
don't know how I feel yet, so I'm like, fight it out. Come on, help me form my
I haven't picked a side.
For me, I don't know. I think theoretically there's supposed to be a certain amount of gravitas to the Bruce Wayne part that I, for some reason, just thought, I don't know that I feel it. But here is the thing. I had that skepticism of, I mean, part of it is that I'm just like, good God, there's a lot of Batman just in general. And
for like 70 years now. Yeah.
And so
wild.
It's like, part of me says, I would give anything for something slightly more novel. But here was the thing. Matt Reeves is a fucking great director because I never would have predicted that when Planet of the Apes was being rebooted, that it could be like half as good. And that whole trilogy to me is masterful. Like I did not expect that they could find a way to completely rethink that franchise, because I think the first one is like one of the great films, and it's obviously one of the great Jerry Goldsmith scores. So I got.
Okay, I wasn't sure when you said the first one. Are you talking about the first reboot? Or are you talking about
no, of course
first,
not.
Like,
the Tim Burton
did it, didn't you? You blew it up.
I don't even think Tim Burton wants to acknowledge.
Charlton Heston.
No, the actual original film is just like as a landmark film, and the funny thing is there's like 5 sequels and they get crazy hokey and ridiculous and stupid, but that first one to me it's such a perfect of its era 60s like cold sci-fi where it's extremely sort of expressionist and unforgiving. And so when they're announced a remake and it's like James Franco, and I thought, okay. And then I saw it and was fucking speechless, blown away. That moment, the first time Caesar speaks, is like one of those that you'll never forget. It was just an unforgettable moment of cinema.
I did not expect those movies to hit me in the emotional way that they did at all.
Right?
They're just beautiful. They're so good.
Yeah.
They have no right to be. It's amazing. But yeah.
So that's where I will see this through, because this guy has bought an enormous amount of goodwill from me, where I'm like, I felt some skepticism, partly just burnout on Batman, but I was like, I will see anything Matt Reeves makes.
Did you already have that skepticism, or did you develop that skepticism upon seeing this trailer?
I guess it was already there, because
this laptop shut.
I mean, I like Nolan's films, for example, quite a lot.
So do I.
To me, like everybody else, The Dark Knight for me is, like that's one of those where it's just a transcendently phenomenal film. But I actually am one of the people that am somewhat apologetic for Dark Knight Rises. I think that film's better than most people give it credit for as well.
Like C.S. Lewis? Do you want to talk about New
York? I have major issues with that movie.
Dark Knight Rises?
Yeah.
I
mean, I think a lot of people do for a lot of different reasons, right? But the one thing that really gets me from a storytelling perspective is that they have Bruce Wayne technically become Batman twice. And I never understood why you would ever watch that journey twice. Why do they have him start off needing to train to try to become Batman and then get captured by Bane and need to train again to become Batman? It would have made so much more sense to me if you're trying to get invested in watching this character grow again to try to protect the city and have all those stakes, if he at the start when he was weak got captured by Bane and then had the journey of becoming Batman. I just think that it happens.
What you're forgetting, Alana, is that when you do a Batman movie, you have to either reference Dark Knight Returns or that one panel where Bane snaps his back. So you have to do the scene. If he was weak, you can't do that scene, Alana. You've not thought this through.
They still could have broken his back when he was weak.
Where are they going to put the pearls?
Mike and I said
he just
said it way better than me. It's like you have to stick to the source material.
I was taking, sorry, to be very clear, I was being incredibly sarcastic, to be very clear. I agree with Alana, she's right, but it's
my thing with this movie, to me, what they two things that they said, here is how we're doing a different Batman story. because there's a lot of it that I was like, Nolan. Like, I've seen these beats, I've seen this camera package, I've seen this lighting.
Sound.
Except for the fact that the music is the one where, like, it's going to be different. The choice of Something in the Way of Nirvana, that album instantly takes me back to, like, a very, like, specific time in my life, because I remember when that album came out. I was in high school. It was just like, so instantly it recontextualizes everything for me. And then the second is the whole, of course, the line, who are you supposed to be? And the way that he goes, bam, 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 bam. And they pause and they're like, you've seen this before, right? But what you haven't seen is this. And he ground and pounds that motherfucker. I was like, this is a different movie. And the reaction on the guy's face, were like, Jesus, he's down, dude. And he beats, as we would say in Texas, beat the tar out that boy.
He beat the tar out that boy.
I was like, this is going to be a different kind of Batman movie. So I was like, I'm Jeffrey Wright, the music choice, that scene.
Well, bear in mind that the trailer music choice has very little to do with what to expect in the film in the end.
I do believe that everything in that trailer is meant to be, especially as a reveal trailer, is meant to be representative of the ethos, at least, of what they're going, spiritually, what they're trying to go for with the movie.
Austin, do the 10 minutes on why trailer music is different to movie music. That's a really interesting topic. Like, genuinely, the audience is going to want that.
Well, I mean,
wait, the headline isn't written by the author?
No, I mean, seriously,
that still blows my mind, by the way.
That's still a pretty good analogy, actually.
Not always, but a lot of the time. I did actually want to ask, do any of you know why they call this a teaser and not a trailer? I feel like
it is a teaser.
But why is it not a trailer when it's
I thought teasers were supposed to be
minutes.
like 15 seconds of mood shots and no like plot beats,
It's expectation management, isn't it? Because they've only shot, I think I saw the thing that they only managed to shoot about 20% before lockdown. Yeah. So I think it's expectation management. It's going, we know it's like 3 locations.
Is that all they managed?
Yeah.
I thought they were further in.
No, 20%, which is crazy. But I mean, I personally am I wasn't really excited about this movie at all because I had not been excited about DC films more recently. I feel like they tried very hard to just
shit the bed.
Yeah, but I think that the reason that they shit the bed in a lot of cases was because they were trying to immediately jump into the world-ending scale that Marvel was at, rather than taking their time and spending the 10 years on trying to build up to that. They were like, end of the world, let's do it every time, which is just
biggest stakes.
The stakes are way too high, especially when it's the same film where I'm learning who this character is. You don't have to
meet Aquaman. You're like, God damn,
just chill out a bit, man.
Slow down for a second.
I think also
give it a second.
I think the fact that the films are generally like that. This is where Shazam was such an incredibly bizarre and interesting left turn.
That was a fun movie.
Austin, your internet's breaking up.
Your
internet's breaking up.
They're so
are you going
humorless
through a tunnel right now.
Those movies are so dour and humorless that I was like, there's a fun factor to the MCU that to me means that like it's the classic thing of it can disarm you to actually being like, wow, I actually care about Iron Man or Captain America or Thor or Ant-Man. I care about them more than I expected because I didn't think I was investing because I was mostly laughing and just kind of popcorn enjoying. And meanwhile, DC is like, frame one, the fate of the universe is at stake, and I am glowery, and my parents didn't love me, and it's like,
kind of.
They kind of locked themselves into that, like in the 80s, right? With DC, like DC historically is very, like ever since Dark Knight blew up and basically like started a new generation of the comic book industry. Sorry, not Dark Knight. Sorry, Dark Knight Returns, the fucking comic in the 80s. Like they definitely have lent into the dourness. Watchmen as well. All the Alan Moore stuff. So like V for Vendetta, all that. Like there was a vibe that was set. Although was that Vertigo? I can't remember.
Vertigo. I thought V for Vendetta was
Vertigo. V for Vendetta was Vertigo. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Anyway, but I feel like the whole like DC machine became we are serious comics. I remember when I was a teenager, like Marvel was like the silly fun stuff. But if you were like grown up, you read DC because that was broody and melancholy and all that stuff.
Hey, now they have
I think
Batman
that's possibly.
They got even darker. more recently.
I think they kind of pushed themselves down that channel, and it meant that when the movie stuff happened, you either have to get Christopher Nolan to make like art movies basically that have the characters in, or you end up in kind of the Zack Snyderverse stuff where it feels very kind of, it's working very hard to convince you it's for grown-ups while actually also still having to sell action figures.
Sorry, V for Vendetta was DC, but I was pretty sure that it was under the Vertigo label, but it was still DC.
Yeah. Oh, is Vertigo? Sorry, this is where I show my ignorance. Vertigo is a sub label, is it?
Yeah, but I mean, it's also kind of like, you know, Marvel Knights and stuff like that. But I thought Vertigo was more fringe at that point, but that was still.
May have been,
I feel like they went in. Marvel
Image Comics and Boom and Vertigo and stuff have always been a little bit. I've always been a Marvel boy, except for Batman. But there's some fringe graphic novels that, if you want to break away from like mainstream superhero stuff, there's some great
Irredeemable. We're gonna throw it out again. Read it.
I pre-ordered the trade of that when we brought it up on the show last time. So I'm looking forward to reading that. And the other thing, speaking about the mainstream, speaking about breaking away from the mainstream. A lot of people are about to wake up on Robert Pattinson, which is great because he is genuinely a great actor.
That's been a very interesting one.
He's had the credit he
That's
deserves.
why I think that they showed him beating the fuck out of someone in that trailer is because, a lot of people did have the reaction of like, how dare you cast Twilight Sparkle Boy as Batman, but not that I have any issue with Twilight. I've not seen all those films, but I don't think it's inherently garbage for whatever reason. He hates them more than anyone else. He fucking hates those movies and is so vocal about it.
He's been very outspoken about it.
Yes, right? I don't think that they expected that they were making this cute little like book spin-off indie thing that then just like blew up.
They're going to make Harry Potter for tweens.
Well, I don't think they expected the popularity, though, is the impression that I get.
Really?
Yeah, that's what he was told, at least. And then it just blew up like crazy.
Oh, from his perspective. I thought from the studio's perspective. I was like, it's 100% is like...
Well, you got to remember it's Lionsgate again. It's Lionsgate, and they are very... But they're very small. They kind of do weird stuff. Like Hunger Games was similar. John Wick was similar. Like, it's that's their vibe, is they take... long bets, and a lot of them have paid off recently, which is cool for them. But,
so then he did Twilight, and then sort of just went off and did a lot of more artsy films. I mean, did you guys see The Lighthouse most recently?
I've not been able to emotionally bring myself to watch it, given where I'm at.
I don't think you'll struggle with that movie emotionally in any way.
Oh, really?
Is it
not
contextually
like
where
really
you're
hard?
at now?
Okay.
Lighthouse came out
last year?
A year ago. Yeah.
No, it was very recent.
Was it? I don't think it was 2 years
honestly,
ago.
guys, I have not been watching movies. I just haven't been. They haven't really captured my...
I mean, I'm the kind of person
I'm not really
who...
releasing any at the moment.
Yeah, anytime anyone would ever ask me if I want to go see a movie, I say yes. It doesn't matter what the movie is. I will always be like, absolutely, let's go see a movie. And because they're not coming out now,
I like going to the movies. Yeah, I like going to the movies, but I would much rather, Austin and I were talking about this. I'm going back through Boardwalk Empire right now, just because I would much rather something about the serialization and the character development the writing that is afforded in something that is more long form than even like a 2-hour movie is just way more compelling.
Did we talk about? I feel like we did. Forgive me if this is retreading, but did we talk about Dark on Netflix, the German show?
I think you might have mentioned it.
None of you have watched it, though,
right?
It's 3 seasons. It's built to be 3 seasons. It's not one of those, let's see how it goes, because once you get into it, you realize this could never possibly have been open-ended. There's no way they didn't write all 3 seasons before shooting the first episode. I just can't fathom it, because the 4D chess of this game, this show is unbelievable as a time travel premise. Like their conceptualization of everything and just the thinking 3 moves ahead at all times. I'm 3 episodes from the end of season 3, and I'm just like the intellectual sort of strain. It's like going to the gym. This show that in the most interesting way, but you have to. You cannot half watch it. I mean, it's one of those that there's no scenes ever that are throwaway. And so,
you sold me on the whole it knew where it was going thing. I'm so bored of shows.
Well, anytime anyone tells
peter
me,
out or get confused.
Yeah, anytime anyone tells me this is a specific small amount of seasons and it has been written that way, I'm like, yes, let's do it.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
Luther to me was the same way, to where it's like, all right, 4 episodes. Sherlock, same thing. It's like 4 episodes this season, we're done. I'm like, all right, as opposed to
which one?
Luther or
although both of those went on a little bit long towards the end there. Some of those later seasons of Sherlock and Luther aren't as good.
And I think Cumberbatch and
Elba.
Oh my God, huh?
Idris Elba.
No,
Luther?
Martin.
Freeman.
Martin Landau.
Bilbo Baggins.
Martin Freeman.
Bilbo Baggins. Tim from
the
Office.
American in Black Panther.
Yes.
Or what's it? Speaking of, can we just say what the fuck?
Yeah.
No, dude, I think it's beautiful. It is sad, absolutely, but I mean, like David Bowie, like, just to go, good night, everybody. I had not heard a peep about him having cancer, and the level of dignity and stoicism and beauty that show and strength of character that shows from him is so fucking remarkable.
I mean, it's overwhelmingly sad that he died is my first takeaway. Cancer research is still just not getting enough funding, and it sucks because I recently did a stream for pancreatic cancer, which has 8% survival rate, and also which is the least of any kind of cancer, and also the least funding. And I feel like based on working with that foundation, Pank One, the public reception of cancer seems to be that people have decided that it is uncurable, and thus they don't get a lot of money in donations for research. It's like we publicly have decided that it can never be cured, so let's not try to cure it. Like, across the board, it's really bad. So it's like just overwhelming.
Never really thought about it, but you're right. That is how I think about cancer. Actually, now you say it out loud,
cure it,
like
so
it is this
why am I giving it my money?
Yeah, it's.
I mean, for
that's
what
a really
it's worth,
interesting intellectual flaw in my makeup. I like
common.
that's interesting.
Cancer is what got my dad, and when he knew he had, this was inescapable, he read this book about it that has the most perfect title. It's called The Emperor of All Maladies, and
That's a really good title.
And the book made very clear that I have it. I haven't read it, but my dad, voracious reader and intellectual through to the end, was incredibly fascinated by even the thing that he knew was killing him. And so he was explaining that we think of it as we just need to pour more money into the research, or we need to just do more testing or more experimentation or what. But the thing is, the cancer is like a family of problems more than a single issue. And it's one of those that it's just kind of like a defect in our code, as it were, that you can't treat it like a bacteria or virus where there's a specific thing that you have to develop an attack for. It's your own body malfunctioning in such a way that, it's one of those that it's really hard to imagine it ever being cured. Not that I am remotely
cure
an expert,
is certainly not the right word, but I think having more reliably efficient treatments developed is the goal.
Well, certainly, yeah.
My dad had
diagnosis
6
presumably
surgeries,
as well.
I think. 6 surgeries this year to get rid of his cancer. And it'd be we'd wait 2 weeks and he'd have to go back to the doctor and be like, is it gone? And he'd be like, grew back again. Because it was growing so fast that every time he would get it cut out, it would just come straight back. And then obviously chemotherapy ended up happening too. But cancer's a real bitch.
Was the approach to that treatment, was it like, we're going to try this, or was it more, this is going to stop? Was it more definitive, or was it more speculative going in? For those surgeries?
For my dad's surgeries?
Yeah.
I mean,
because I can't imagine the emotional roller coaster was like, this is going to cure it or fix it at least, and then or bait, and it's like like you said, you wait 2 weeks. I wasn't sure if going in, if science is at the level of arrogance to say this is going to do it.
No medical professional's going to say that to her. They're going to massively hedge the bets.
Yeah.
That's what I was asking, what your specific experience was.
So I never spoke to the doctors, obviously, my dad being in Australia, so I never was able to go on any of those visits with him or anything. But he never seemed to think that any of them would be definite. And the doctors were always like, let's hope this one works. Let's hope this works. Yeah, cool. So it seemed like they were pretty reasonable about it every time. But back to Chadwick Boseman, I think one thing that was very obvious to me is because I remember having a conversation with someone about this maybe 6 months ago. He just looked really thin and people were being so rude to him. And I was like, he's sick. He's obviously sick with something, but was flooded with comments of, why do you look so thin? Why are you so thin? Look how gaunt you look. And I was like, please, like, let this be a reminder to everyone who made comments like that about how he looked too skinny, that you don't know what's happening in people's lives when you say awful things about them. Like, please, I hope you remember leaving those comments. Because we never talk about it when men's bodies are concerned either. Because obviously men still get called too fat or too thin just as much as women, with maybe a little bit less poison where Hollywood is concerned. But it's still a huge thing. It's like, just remember how hurtful that
Especially
can be.
if you're famous for being, like, buff.
A superhero.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, to his credit, again, the fact that there was no rebuttal, the fact that there was no, I'm going to appeal to public empathy, I'm going to respond to that, or make people feel bad for saying comments like that. I wasn't aware that people were making comments like that. Again, I remember when David Bowie dropped Black Star, I was like, I've got to listen to it. It's a David Bowie record. I listened to it. I was like, wow, maybe you should have just kind of left it with Golden Years. Like, you didn't need to put out this album. And then I realized what it was. It was he wrote his own eulogy, and he contextualized his own experience. And the second that I remember the first time I listened to it in my car. The second time I listened to it, I was on a train in the UK, and just the sheer difference of environment and headspace that I was in listening to, I was like, this is one of the most brilliant things that David Bowie has ever done. Ziggy Stardust and the Spider from Mars pales in comparison to Black Star for the fact that he never said anything and just went, good night, everybody, is just, I hope that I have that level of character and strength and resolve. If when my time comes, no matter what the cause is, I hope that I can meet it with the power and strength and confidence that David Bowie and Chadwick Boseman did, because that's just next level.
I respect the take, but I also want to say that I think that people who are very open about dealing with the struggles that they're going through can benefit people massively, and I don't think that they are necessarily weak for publicly talking about it.
I don't think Troy's implying that the opposite is bad.
No, I think it's not an either or thing. It's that talking about it, and to me, coming out and going, hey, who was it that just recently began talking about he had a terminal illness. I can't remember who it was, but being able to own it on its face and go, like Austin's dad is like, I'm fascinated with this thing. I want to learn about this. And
it became his favorite subject. It was one of those. It was like you couldn't not talk about it because it still represented a frontier of knowledge. You know.
Yeah.
Or people that go out and decide to become champions for this and say, listen, I have the resources or the platform to be able to speak to this. And I'm not talking about going into a cave and dying privately. I'm talking about being able to say, I will look at this thing in its face and understand that we go hand in hand together into this darkness.
I see what you're saying.
But I refuse to be dragged into it by it. And that to me is it's not about, being silent but there is a level of stoicism that says, this is happening to me.
Well, not letting it define him. The fact that when they said that he started treatment in 2016, and I was like, he fucking shot Civil War and Black Panther and Infinity War and Endgame. And there's this movie that they just recently did called 21 Bridges and a host of others. I was like, and those, especially a movie like Black Panther, that is a physically insanely demanding role. There's all these fight scenes and all these, wire I know obviously there's stunt doubles for some of that shit, but there's a lot that's got to be him. And I'm like, and just the amount of physical endurance, I was just speechless. That was the part
that's a real life superhero. Yeah, it's crazy.
No shit.
That's the real life superhero.
Yeah,
no
Mike,
shit.
You're being incredibly quiet.
I'm hearing everything you guys are saying, and I respect it massively. I think there's a risk with romanticizing any one approach to something as massive as death.
Generally I agree.
And yeah, I think don't get me wrong, this is a great way of handling it, and the Bowie thing's a great way of handling it. But I also think kind of kicking and screaming and tearing the world down around you as you go is absolutely equally.
Yeah, I think if you have cancer and you're yelling about it, I still respect that.
I think that's absolutely fine.
That's how I intend to go.
I will. I won't. I will not go quietly into that night. But yeah, I think I know that's not what anyone's saying. I think that's kind of what maybe Alana was saying as well, is that there is a risk whenever you romanticize or say what an approach it has shows strength or heroism. There's a risk potentially of kind of diminishing or dismissing kind of the other approaches, which, you know, if he'd become a great advocate for it, that would have also been an awesome, strong position to take. If he'd honestly kept it entirely private. Basically, I don't think there's anything kind of wonderful about death, unfortunately. There are ways of meeting it, which I agree with you. There's poetry and niceness in it, but at the end of the day, it's a tragic thing that a 43-year-old man, you know, has passed on. So yeah, I was quiet because I wasn't like disagreeing with anything you were saying. I just didn't think I had anything useful to add.
This is such a great conversation, and I because death is the great period.
Equalizer.
It is the great, absolutely is the great equalizer. There's been a lot, and I am steeped in this right now because, I mean, 44, right? So I look at Chadwick Boseman. Anybody who is before me, I go, holy crap. Or especially right around my age, I go, oh my God. And Austin is one of my closest friends. And the fact that he lost his father, Travis Willingham, one of my closest friends, he lost his father. And now I have a son. And so I go, oof, what does it look like for Traveler if I'm no longer in the picture? And I said something to Pam yesterday, and I said, I'm going to be out of his life longer than I will be in it.
Ideally.
That's not sad.
That's
ideally. Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah. That's how it's supposed to be.
Nothing gives me anxiety or like makes me sick to the pit of my stomach, like thinking about losing my parents. And you saying that just made me go, oh, fuck. Like, I hate it so much.
Here's what I can say to you as in this situation as the child, right? And I'm speaking to it as a father.
That's how I think of our relationship at all times.
There is sadness in death. Yes, I'm not diminishing that at all. I've been reading so much about this because I was paralyzed by fear of death. Paralyzed. I'm not over catastrophizing my vernacular. It would shut me down, and I would either not be able to sleep or I would not be able to think because I was so crippled by the fear of this, and I had to get to the point. From?
Because I'm not at all scared of dying. I'm scared of my parents dying.
Sure. For me, I think a lot of it has to do with coming to terms with how I was raised and what death meant, and it was the ultimate judgment. I think that there's, I don't know. A lot of that's a amazing question for me to unpack is why did it mean so much to me? And not only that, but why was I doing stupid things to my body, like smoking a pack and a half of cigarettes a day in order to exacerbate and
deal with the anxiety of that. Right?
Yeah, it's the most counterintuitive. Yeah. But like a lot of it, I started reading Marcus Aurelius and the notion of like, here's a dude that struggled with his health his entirety of his life. He watched all of his kids except for one and his wife die. And he was like, this thing will either break me or I will learn from it and I will meet it as a friend. And his last words were, if you now grant me leave to go, then I will bid you farewell and pass on ahead of you. And to me, that is just like, that is, to not only be at peace with it, but also to be able to offer peace to those who will be grieving, to me is just a wonderful, tremendous gift. I never slept better the night that I signed a life insurance policy for travelers. Like I can go to sleep now because I have taken care of my family and specifically my son. And I think it's just, for me, I have been, like Austin's dad, I've been fascinated and fixated on death for a while. And I think that, watch this, like Bruce Wayne, there is the ability.
Beautiful.
There it is. We are the pearls on the necklace of Martha Wayne right now. Please continue.
The pearls of wisdom on the necklace of Martha Wayne. To be able to say, this moment may define me, but it will not define me in tragedy. It will define me in triumph. I will use this as fuel to become the best version of myself as opposed to remaining the worst version.
I can relate to that massively. Like, that's definitely kind of, because the men in my family...
Sorry, go ahead.
I can't.
Yeah, so we just moved it away instead of dropping it.
It's good. No, but it's true, and I can relate. The men in my family have kind of died relatively young, so I've always had this kind of assumption that I wouldn't, have a long life, and that's definitely kind of driven me to kind of do awesome stuff and try and maximize it, min-max my game. Right?
I think I'm a little bit similar to that, but also I have no obsession with death because I've been sort of sick my whole life. So like my parents made me sign a will last year. My mom was like, "You keep fainting. We don't know." Like there was one day where I fainted and I hit my head and I passed out and I didn't remember anything that had happened for several days beforehand. So like they were like, "Look, if something happens, we just don't want everything that you own to get stuck in the US." And that was like a serious reality that I had to deal with it.
Parents eyeing your cyberpunk chair.
I did write, and I find this so funny, but I recognize that many people might find this like evil and absurd. I specified in my will that my mom has to publicly display the Death Stranding baby collectible that I have.
Yes!
I was like, I give this
That's
to my
amazing.
mother. She must display it openly somewhere in her house. Wow. Her house is this like beautiful
that's the shit that I'm talking about. That is amazing.
That's good.
That is being able to look at it and go, ha ha ha. Did you feel better after you wrote your will?
I've never been scared though, because I think that I've always been someone who's sick. Like, like I had my first serious asthma attack when I was like 8 and I was in hospital. So it's like, I think that that's the perspective I have. And also speaking to like, if you speak about, Chadwick Boseman going quietly, I only spoke up about my health issues at the start of last year because there was a period where I hadn't made any public content for like 4 months and people were like, "What is this?" And I was like, let me just actually openly talk about it for the first time ever, even though I had been sick for a lot longer than that. And I feel like more than anything it helped people because I've had so many people reach out to me now who've had similar issues talk to me about it. So it is, of course, I've gotten criticism where people have like called me a hypochondriac despite the thousands of dollars I put in the medical system. They do that anyway. They're like, sure. I was like, it was like fucking so much money last year. But and then there's also people who'll be like, "Oh, you just talk about being sick all the time," which so people like do definitely treat you like you should shut up about it. But ultimately, I felt like it was a helpful thing for me to do. And speaking to people was helpful. And then I have a lot of people reach out to me who also have CFS, which is just like a very difficult thing to deal with. That's even been helpful for me to have other people to talk to about it because I don't know anyone else who has it. So yeah, I think speaking up about those things can ultimately be tremendously helpful, but it does mean that I've never had any fear of death. I have fear of losing my parents before me. I'm always like, I'll probably faint on a staircase and that'll be it. And it'll be like, peace. We did it. Did my best, but because of that, I'm not worried about it, which is like, I think very nice, but it's very foreign to me, the idea that like people would be worried about death, though naturally you should be, right?
Well, it's funny because
it makes sense. There's a logic to it, isn't there? There's a logic to it, yeah.
The thing that I think we overlook is that death is always only bad for everyone who cares about the person that died. It's the least problematic for the person who actually does die.
Yeah.
Well said. Solves all your problems.
And that with the caveat of how you die is may make for a horrendous but most likely short experience. But again, it depends on what we're talking about, and I don't want to go down that road. But to your point, Alana, specifically, I shared that feeling for a long time. I remember my dad and I were very close. Like with this Dawn Treader, and there's a million stories like that. We did a lot of projects together, a lot of home kind of projects. Let's remodel the basement, blah 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 blah. He was always Mr. Handyman, Mr. Renaissance man in general. We did a lot of those things, but the thing, he was also a surgeon, so I never went to like a doctor. I would just always ask him, and so there were a million times growing up where if I had a question about something, the answer was always, here's the answer, or let's go look it up together. Mm-hmm. And I remember distinctly at like maybe age 12, 13, maybe before that, one day I just out of nowhere, I don't think it was spurred by anything, but I had this sudden realization of he is not going to be around forever. And I felt this sudden vulnerability because I thought, I go to him for so many things that I don't know how to like function without this source of knowledge, support, everything, camaraderie, whatever you want to name, just love and compassion. It felt like, holy shit, I've built a weakness into my system where it's like, you know, if life takes a shot at this specific element of my life, it will do disproportionate damage to other aspects of my life versus if it had taken a shot at other parts of my life. And I had this fear of how can I possibly, it was equal parts emotional vulnerability, but also literal pragmatic. Like, I don't know how to life. I depend on my parents and my dad in particular for questions. And I remember through into my 20s, it's like the first time I'm filing taxes on my own. And it's like, all right, what the hell is this form? And it was like, he always seemed to know the answer to everything. And I know I romanticize it, but it feels like that. My memory repaves over the details to make it just that he was the one-stop shop for everything.
Your dad does sound Ravenclaw as fuck, is all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And he, but the funny thing was, that was never, ever, ever, that everything I'm describing is antithetical to everything that he believed in as a father. His whole thing, because he was, you know, Eagle Scout growing up and all that. His mentality was, I want to teach you to depend on yourself. And all those things were actually his way of kind of preparing for that. And then I remember when I was literally sitting by his bed, knowing that he had days at most left, it dawned on me, all of this suddenly hit me. And the last words literally I ever said to him were, I want you to know that I'll be fine without you. And he smiled and was basically, he could barely speak, but it was like,
you just made me tear up. I have tears in my eyes because that's.
I don't mean to. I know that this is a vulnerable spot for you, and I'm not trying to pry anything open. I promise.
Well,
I just want you to know that I went through a similar arc, and
my parents are useless. Is the thing. The difference is that they're fucking useless. My mom's like, "What's a PDF?" And I'm like, so we don't have the relationship.
So they can't carve boats. No boat carving in your family.
My dad,
mine neither, Alana. I get it.
That was the most perfect. That was literally the most perfect response. I will never top that.
There's no part of me that is like depends on them or calls them for questions. It's that they call me.
That's great, Austin.
Like,
my parents are useless.
I feel like I'm their parent most of the time.
Oh, that got me good.
Yeah. Not home. What are they eating okay? I don't know what they're gonna do. I can just worry about them all the time. But it's certainly I do have that anxiety of like I can't imagine what I would do if either of them died. And obviously that's going to happen, but it's like a crippling fear of like, oh fuck, that I just like have to subside. That some movies I just like have trouble watching. I think it was Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Like just very much deals with the theme of a parent dying. And so the whole time watching that movie, I was like, oh God, it's just really...
Dude, really also every Disney movie, like it's a Joseph Campbell thing. It's like just, if you want empathy... Instant orphan. That's how you do it. Same thing with Bruce Wayne.
Or look at you know, everybody. I saw a friend share a list of the 20-odd Pixar films ranked, and two related to this topic. Two things come out from that. Is that one? They said, which I generally agree with, that Up is actually not one of the best Pixar films. It has one of the best vignettes that all of cinema has produced.
Hands down. That was also in the theater going, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, like the fact that, and that's obviously apropos what we're talking about. Like that film took you through the sort of journey of death in a very
5 minutes.
Beautiful, perfect, fast tracked.
Twice.
Emotionally, yeah. But similarly, everyone, I think, would agree, every sane person would agree that Toy Story 3 has to be one of the absolute highlights of all of Pixar's.
Austin, your internet's breaking up.
He's right, with the conveyor belt, right? With the recycling plant.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing. There's the reason why, especially with regard to how to kind of approach through literature. You're watching and
you're like, Pixar are going to kill Buzz Lightyear. Like you genuinely believe it.
No, you know why? You know why I think that moment is one of the.
I love it.
that moment as one of the most kind of beautiful explorations of death is that what I love is that they're heading towards the fire on the conveyor belt, and their response is to hold each other's hands and to just face it. They stop struggling, and they're like, we're in it. We're in this moment. And I was like,
all right.
Fuck. Like, what? That movie to me is perfect. The whole Toy Story franchise to me is perfect. But
one of the Toy Stories was the highest rated movie ever on Rotten Tomatoes until, I believe, Lady Bird temporarily knocked it off that spot. So there are loads of movies that have 100. Like, if I look at the list, Citizen Kane has 100, Godfather has 100, Rear Window has 100, Casablanca has 100, but...
Rear Window has 100?
Yeah.
It does what it does well.
I don't even think Hitchcock would have said that.
Vertigo, Notorious,
Hitchcock hated everything he ever made, though, didn't he? So, it's fine.
Yeah, but I believe that in terms of, like, the volume of reviews...
Right. Weighted.
It's just everyone reviewed it because it was Toy Story 3,
right?
I'm
not sure if it was 3 or 2. I think it was 3. Yeah, I think you're right. And then Lady Bird temporarily beat it, and then one guy gave it like a lesser review, and it knocked back down or something like that, if I remember correctly.
Just to be a dick.
Yeah, Toy Story movies are
such a guy
though.
thing.
I don't know that he did it to be a dick, but it happened.
There's a really cool book I read a few years ago called Death Set to Music, which is about seminal classical pieces that explore this, and one of the most famous is Mahler 9, and there's an incredible documentary of Leonard Bernstein talking about...
Don't you dare do it, Bithel.
Holy
Don't
shit,
you
he's
dare.
doing it.
I'm not. I'm just gonna be
Oh my God.
I'll pass it.
We're moving into like David Copperfield land right now. Bithel pulls out that book. Austin, is this your copy?
Yes,
actually,
exactly. Austin
Your
in
name
the
in it.
yeah, exactly. He's
Magician, magic magician.
I was trying to think of what's the David Blaine. He's turning all of us into Blaintologists.
You don't believe me? Watch.
But this go find on YouTube Leonard Bernstein talking about Mahler's Ninth Symphony, because the amazing thing is that you think of a traditional classical, like 19th century Beethoven, blah, 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 symphony. They very often end, where they get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's all about the, bum, 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 bum. And Mahler 9 does the exact opposite, where first off, the piece is gigantic. It's an hour and a half long, an average Beethoven symphony is half that. And so this thing, I remember buying it as a kid on CD, and it's 2 discs of the one piece. And so the final movement is it takes 30 minutes for the thing to end, and it just keeps getting smaller. And it is, to me, it's one of the most perfect representations through the abstraction of some art form of that process, because it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and quieter and quieter and quieter. And then you think it's done, and then it has this little last gasp, and it tries to build up, and then it gets smaller and smaller again. And then it tries to build up, but it can't get quite as high as it did the first time. And he takes his time, and there's this just unbelievably beautiful thing of Bernstein describing it. And it was one of those that it made me think, and I can put the question to you guys so that we mention games at least once today. Has any game ever done that? Is there a game? I can't think. I found myself sitting here wondering, is there a game that has ever explored the actual act of death in a way like that, like a piece of music? You would think, but I can't think of something that.
I mean, that Dragon Cancer.
Yeah. I was going to say that Dragon Cancer is probably the most
But that's not. That's about observing death.
Not about someone who's dying.
Right,
death.
not about experiencing.
Dude, Austin, we have a separate call to get on after this call. I actually thought of something, by the way, too, that we do need to discuss. I will submit.
We'll come back to your question, Austin.
Yeah, I don't know.
I will submit to you this: the way that I viewed death in my 20s and my 30s, and now in my 40s, has been an absolute progression. And there's a picture that Pam took of her grandparents. She went out back home to Alabama and was just taking these beautiful shots that she has of her grandfather. And every time that I get annoyed, whenever Pam is like, "Can you pose for this picture?" and I was like, let's just be in this moment, not have to feel like we're posing for it. I'm surrounded in our house by the art that she creates, and it's the only it's the only like tangible photographs are the only analog ways that you can pass down memories. Like everything else is like, hopefully Apple's around in 40 years to where we can look at videos that we've stored on the cloud. We have no idea. But she has this picture of her grandfather and her grandmother standing at the burial plots that they've reserved. And it's as if they're shown as like, here's our garden, there's our tomatoes, they're going good, and here's where we're going to be buried. And I feel pretty good about that. And they just have this almost not even dispassionate, but kind of like
nonchalant. Yeah,
that's where we're going to be. And I was like, I think that's maybe that's the goal is to be able to get there, but not have it take 96 years, 85 years, 75 years, or 45 years, but to be able to get there as quickly as possible, so that the best gift that we can give the people who are left is exactly what Austin says. Like, I want you to know I'm going to be okay. That's a result of Austin's character, but it's also a result of everything that his dad did to build into that. So that's kind of who I want to be. I just want the people around me to know that I'm okay and that they're going to be okay. That's the gift that I want.
So then, no, you can't think of a video game.
I can't think of
and to be clear, I'm pissed off.
I was trying to give Mike time to come up with something.
If anything awful happens to me, I'm really angry about it. I'm not happy about it.
Not going quietly.
No matter what.
I didn't like it. It sucks. I'm annoyed about it.
You know, one of my
life is preferred, but death is okay.
One of my
no.
What Remains of Edith Finch? Does that maybe sort of count? I mean, that's not.
That's an interesting.
It's definitely about dealing with death.
One of my favorite quotes. I'm a big fan. He was not perfect, but I'm a big fan of Troy. And when he was dying, he said something very memorable. He just didn't know it at the time.
That's the only thing about death that I'm afraid of now, is saying something stupid.
I remember he just put the pink and blue lights up, and he talked a little bit about death, and then
Mike
unfortunately,
I can't wait to see the comments on this.
I saw a meme once that said. I saw a meme once that was like, I'm sure my death will be caused by being sarcastic at an inappropriate moment. And I thought, that's going to be on my tombstone for sure. But no, one of my favorite. I
still like the Royal Tenenbaums. What's the Royal Tenenbaums one? Mrs. Tenenbaum died rescuing children from an orphanage.
Yeah.
That's the gravestone I want. That's good.
It's like there was a burning bus full of nuns.
Yeah. I did what I could.
And puppies. For some reason, there was a unicorn there, and it was the only one ever.
One of my favorite public speakers, irrespective of one's thoughts on his politics or his philosophy, one of my favorite orators of truly all time was Christopher Hitchens.
Better. I was so
what do you think I was going to say? Like Mussolini?
Hitler. No, me and Alana were both like Hitler. It's going to be Hitler.
It's got to be Hitler.
But Hitler's too obvious. You got to go for
Someone say Star Wars, someone say Hitler, and someone say Jason Schreier.
And now Jesus as well, I guess.
I said Jesus already. I got us covered.
So
we're just helping to build that future T-shirt where it's just like on the back.
It's a word cloud.
Well, no, I was thinking instead of the cities on the tour, it's just all the different things that we have to like and the dates that we said them on.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Austin.
So it's short. So Hitchens had cancer, and that's what killed him. But he remained a very public figure through till the very, very end, and he just refused to back down. And there was an event once where he did a public kind of debate about religion with he and Sam Harris, and one of them was a famous Jewish rabbi whose name I'm forgetting, and then a fourth guy. I've
never heard that sentence before.
And I've not heard this joke. So there was a rabbi, an atheist.
I know exactly. It's a perfect setup. So
go on.
It's a perfect.
Go on.
I wish I could live up to the setup you've just given me. But so what happened was,
this is gonna be a good one. Go ahead.
Yeah, they do this 2-hour discussion about religion and politics and blah blah blah. Mostly on religion and blah. But Hitchens is bald through this, and he had never been bald, but he's obviously undergoing cancer treatment. And so they end the night of the spirited debate where the moderator says, all right, all of that said, just one last question for you all here, but for Mr. Hitchens, how are you feeling? And he says, well, I'm dying, but so are you. And I was like, in one sentence, it just sums it all up. You know, we don't
and
choose
Sylvia
the time,
Plath
but we
goes,
definitely.
"Thank you."
Yeah, it was great.
I find something comforting in it. That's the reality.
There's this corollary adjacent to Star Wars. Star Trek.
Now in my wheelhouse.
A great moment from a movie that I think is also given a short shrift unfairly is the first TNG movie, Generations.
Great movie.
I've always known it together.
Everyone always shits all over that movie, and I never understood why.
It gets better every time you watch it. Generations, it really does.
I thought that the chance to see the two captains play off each other's sensibilities is quite delightful in general.
But 3 minutes, right? Like for three
but
really
that's
good
as
minutes.
long as you could get those egos together in the same room.
It works great. But what I love is that Malcolm Gladwell's
Get him out.
his whole thing is
he's called Malcolm McDowell. It's Malcolm McDowell, not Malcolm Gladwell.
Gladwell's the author. Yeah, Malcolm.
Oh, you were actually. I thought you were changing topic. I was doing a joke.
With
you actually said Malcolm Gladwell
in the canteen.
Oh my God.
Wow,
he's trying to move the sun nearer the planet to kind of prove some larger kind of statistical political
he wants to escape
issue.
death.
Yeah.
Malcolm Gladwell is Malcolm Gladwell was proving Blink through his mass genocide.
Yeah.
Malcolm McDowell's whole thing of trying to escape death, where he says time is a predator that stalks you. And what I love is that final scene where they're on the wreckage of the Enterprise, recovering what they can, and he finds the photo album. Picard finds the photo album of his childhood and the chateau in Paris and all of that, he and Riker are talking, and he says, you know, someone told me once that time is like a predator that stalks you, but I think of it as a companion on the journey to remind you to savor every moment. And it was always like, what a perfect Picard kind of moment too. It's just perfect.
It's also a really nice secular approach to the same conversation, which is very Star Trek to do that kind of philosophy, but in a very secular way, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can be poetic too on the non-religious end of things as well.
Yes, I don't think you need heaven to comfort you about death, nor do I think you need hell to make you fear death. I think that
something done out of fear of consequence has no moral value.
Thank you.
Completely agree.
That is that to me is everything is like
and
it
the
is
flip,
enough on its own.
It's the flip also. Things done for reward
have no moral value.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone did present it one way and said, hell is not a punishment, and heaven is not a reward. They are both simply God granting you the truest desires of your heart on an eternal level. And I was like, that's an interesting notion. But I don't think you need either of those things to help you deal with death. I think that death is enough on its own, and I think what you need more than anything is just conversations like this.
For me,
I believe
the eternal part of it, though, for me is very existentially terrifying. The idea of like your punishment or reward, or even neither, it's some kind of neutral purgatory. The idea of the status quo is now.
How far are you in the good place?
Very good point.
I have not yet. I've gotten many tweets ever since we brought that up, though, from people asking.
Oh my God, Austin, it's going to be your favorite show the second you watch it.
He's like, what should I watch? Mike Bithell, I let you down. I am myself. I should have said, watch The Good Place right now. Get to that final season, and that is just like, oh man.
All right.
Man.
Oh man, we need to. Yeah.
Because to me, it's here's the analogy. Yeah. Here's the analogy that I would draw with regard to my profession. I think that music is only made meaningful by the silence before and after, and that's partly why on every game, for example, I'm always saying, do we actually need a cue here? Because it would be probably more interesting.
The music doesn't come in for 20 minutes. That's always your thing, isn't it? It's the director's like, I'm like, Austin, it's got to have a theme tune. He's like, no, 20 minutes of absolute silence.
I mean, I remember when BioShock came
I'm with you though. It's percussion, it's tempo, right? Yeah.
You want to feel the purpose in it, and to me, that is a metaphor to life. Like if. I think it was Mark Twain who said, something. I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the quote exactly, but he said essentially that he doesn't fear his non-existence and death because his non-existence for the billions of years prior to his life didn't bother him much either. And I to me, that's a pretty good take. Like, you know, it's hard for us to imagine not existing because it's all that we've known. But there's the overwhelming majority of time we didn't. And we can sort of understand that. And so for me, the idea that we didn't exist for, 13 plus billion years, multiverse notwithstanding the potential mussing of that calculation.
Only on this show would you have to take a sidebar to be. Of course, we're not talking about quantum mechanics.
Of course, we're not talking about string theory or the multiverse.
Let's presume a Euclidean universe for the purposes of the metaphor we're making right now.
I don't want Michio Kaku going, well, come on, guys, I just listened to the latest episode.
Which clearly he would be the one.
Yeah, well, you know.
No, I find...
we would get the aliens guy. We would get the ancient aliens guy.
It's true.
I find our irrelevance comforting, and I always have. Like, I'm very small and insignificant in the grand scheme of things, and I find that really comforting. It's the same as, like, some people look at videos of the planets. You know how you can see, like, a human, and then it zooms out, and it zooms out, and it zooms out. I'm like...
Just shared one of those.
I love that. More of that.
Pale blue dot,
I don't matter.
Pale blue
it's
dot.
Great.
What episode number is this?
This is episode 27.
27.
But I also did just want to, like, before we wrap up right now, I actually think it's, like, you know, kind of nice that in any small way Chadwick Boseman's passing led us to having a beautiful conversation about death.
That's legacy, man.
Yeah, but obviously a hell of a lot of respect to him, and I think that I'll probably leave a link in the description to where you can. I think my campaign for pancreatic cancer, obviously different to colon cancer, which unfortunately he suffered from, but the campaign's still up, so you can donate. So I'll just ask anyone who's watching to do that. Help people who have cancer. It would be wonderful.
I think anything that can draw attention to that is a worthy endeavor. So thank you for being a part of that, Alana. Thank you for facilitating these conversations too, and Austin, thank you for bringing it up. We were going to talk about Robert Pattinson for the entire thing.
Who I'm really excited about. And also, like, I think it's really cool that we're going back to a more damaged, younger Batman.
Agreed.
There we go.
Yes, I was going to say my closing thoughts on the Batman after having just discussed death very profoundly. That I'm very excited. I think Paul Dano is a fantastic actor. Like, so good that I find it distracting. I'm like, fuck, how is he so good at acting? That cast is incredible. Colin Farrell not looking like Colin Farrell is such an interesting choice because he's so
Is that Colin Farrell?
Is that who that was?
Yeah.
Have they confirmed
Yes.
that? So is it prosthetics or did he just put on a bunch of weight? It's prosthetics.
He's so handsome.
Why not cast an ugly man? Like I don't.
Like
speaking as an ugly man, I feel like we.
You're not an ugly man. You're a beautiful man.
You need only read the comment, Mike. You
That's
need
why
only read the comments.
That's why I said it. Soak it in. Soak it in. Enjoy it. Yeah, this is why I live. If I was dead, I wouldn't be able to enjoy these kind of.
My favorite Colin Farrell movie is probably In Bruges. Dude.
He's very good in that.
And if you ever go to Bruges, it is Fairtown Town.
Desperately want to go there.
Yeah.
Also Zoe Kravitz, absolutely love her. So this is a really great cast. It looks really dark, which I love, like as a Batman fan. And it seems like it's taking vibes from The Long Halloween. So just to anyone who made it this far and is still caring about Batman, as your resident Batman lover, I'm going to tell you, read The Long Halloween. It's great. And I think that's what this movie is going for. So hopefully Calendar Man makes an appearance. And he's everyone's favorite. But we'll see.
It's the essential
favorite fringe. We haven't done a Clayface. We could do a Clayface in there. That'd be kind of an interesting. Throw them all in.
That's kind of what Long Halloween is. But Calendar Man is one, and then Suicide Squad having Polka Dot Man is very funny to me. As a man who
that looks really fun. That Suicide Squad movie.
I think Suicide Squad is going to be.
We haven't talked about any of this. We've not even talked about all the
games,
the Rocksteady stuff, and the games.
I know DC
Gotham Knights, which is a great logo.
It's pretty solid. Is a good logo. I'm concerned that the game is going to be very games of service microtransaction-y, but unclear right now. But that is the impression I get. And
Troy's giving a facial gesture that implies that he agrees with that presumption.
I'm worried about it. But. Yeah.
Well, we can get into that next episode.
Yeah.
On Play, Watch, Listen.
Yeah, sorry.
We didn't even intro the show.
Wait. Before we do that.
That's true.
Guys,
welcome,
there was something
everybody.
else
Hi,
we wanted
everyone.
to do.
Thank you so much for watching Play, Watch, Listen. I'm Alana. I'm joined by Troy, Austin, and Mike. What are we talking about today, Mike?
We, today, are going to be playing a special song, aren't we, Austin and Troy?
Oh my God, thank you very much for the reminder.
There you go. Austin, take us away.
Happy birthday. All right, this is one for you. A lot of piss. Take it to the top there, Maestro. Take it, yeah. Right. There we go. Take it from the top there. That's.
You're making me do this again.
Happy birthday. Go ahead and keep playing. Happy birthday. No, go ahead and start. Happy birthday to you. That's right. A lot of piss. Happy birthday. To you. Happy birthday. You're not holding it here, right? Happy birthday. Mike Bithell and I.
Alana.
Happy birthday to you. I'm not done yet.
Just grateful to have been involved.
If I didn't know better, I think you were all drunk.
Why do you think we're not drunk?
Drunk on the power that comes with having a podcast. That's what it is.
That's right, everybody.
Beautiful work.